Probability. Welcome to Probability Part 2, using numbers to talk about chance. And remember, chance is another word for probability. If you're talking about it mathematically, if you're using numbers, usually you're talking about the word probability. So let's talk about something that is fairly common that many people will do. You ever been watching a sports show or something and they say there's been a coin toss and the red team's going first because of the coin toss? Or somebody might say, oh, I don't know what we should do. Let's flip a coin. And you flip a coin and the coin tells you what to do. So what that means is somebody's gotten a coin like this. This is a Canadian quarter. And they've flipped the coin in the air and it spins in the air and then it comes down and it lands either on tails, in this case the side with the caribou, or heads, the side with the head on it. So the reason why people use a coin is that it introduces an element of chance in what you're doing. You don't know for sure. You don't know for sure which side this coin is going to land. I can't say when I flip this, I can't say for sure that it's going to come up either heads or tails. I might say, well, maybe it'll come up heads, or maybe it'll come up tails. I can't even say it's likely to be heads or likely to be tails, because when you flip a coin like this, there's only two sides. It's going to be one or the other. But how likely is it that it's going to come up heads? And how likely is it that it's going to come up tails? So when you're talking about questions like that, you're talking about probability. And the reason why people use coins to flip a coin to see who goes first is because there are only two possibilities. The coin can be flipped and come up tails, or it can come up heads, and half the time it should be tails when you flip it, and half the time it should be heads. But let's test that. Because this is part 2, we're talking about using numbers to talk about chance. Let's test that idea out. Let's see if a coin really is a fair way to judge whether one person should start first in the game or the other person should start first. If it's fair, heads should come up half the time and tails should come up half the time. So I'm going to make a grid of 20 cells, okay, just like in 20 questions. So let's pretend that each of these cells here, these squares inside the grid, each one of those is a coin flip. So if a coin is a fair way to decide which team gets the ball first, then half the time the coin should come up heads, and the other half of the time it should come up tails. So we're going to do something called doing trials. And in this case, the trials are going to be flipping the coin. Just like in games, sports games that you've seen. Every time it comes up heads, we're going to write an H in here. And every time the coin comes up tails, we're going to write a T. So let's actually start flipping the coin and keeping track here. So here we go. So that moved out of the way of the camera, but that's a heads. Tails? I'll do it back here. There we go. Tails. So we flipped the coin 20 times. So let's count up how many times we got tails and how many times we've got heads. So let's do tally marks. Let's count the heads first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Very good. Now, here's something interesting. I did this already before. I did this another time. And the other time that I did this, I did 20 trials of it. And I got 9 and 11. 9 heads and 11 tails. This time when I did it, I did get 10 tails and 10 heads each time. So that's very interesting. That shows that half the time when I flipped the coin, I got tails and half the time I got heads, which means it's fair. But if you do this at home, it's probably you're not going to get the same as I did. You might get 9 and 11, you might get 8 and 12, you might even get 7 and 13. But if you could say flip the coin 1,000 times, probably if you flipped it 1,000 times, pretty close to 500 times you'd have tails and 500 times you'd have heads. So here is something I'd like you to do. At the end of this video, I would like you to click on the link in today's slides. There's a Scratch project that I made. Okay, and the link is on the slides and it's called Coin Flips. And in this Scratch project, so it'll ask you how many times do you want to flip the coin, and it will flip the coin in the Scratch project, and the Scratch project will keep track if it's heads or tails, and then show on the screen how many times it came up tails or heads, and then you can see how fair the coin is. So the reason why I have you going to the Scratch project is after you actually do the flipping yourself with the coins, you can go to the Scratch project and flip the coin 10,000 times or 100,000 times or 1,000,000 times and see how many times it comes up heads and how many times it comes up tails. So give that a go next.